Great. Welcome back, everyone, for what will be the final chunk of time together. There's probably a better metaphor than chunk. Our the part you've all been waiting for, where Sarah talks passionately about books. Before we go to that part, I just wanted to thank Sarah for giving us some guidelines to think about how to welcome Indigenous voices into our classrooms using protocol. Understanding that resources aren't just there for us to take and use, but we have to engage in reciprocally, reverently, respectfully. And so Sarah's given us some tools for that today. Thanks so much. As you can imagine, it's probably easiest to do this with a colleague if you can. Let's look at this book together. Let's look at these guidelines and think about what this might mean. It's not a formula, folks. It's not like if you just do it, it's going to work. It's about engaging and building this practice and getting used to welcoming and coming to understand the diversity of Indigenous voices and nations and what they can teach us. Sarah, bring us some hot books. We're ready.
Okay, so here's my thing. If Leyton, if you have questions about specific books from that list that was emailed out to you, like if you just want me to briefly chat about a particular book that you see on the list and you're curious about, please feel free to pop it in the chat. And if you don't have anything, I will just keep talking until Leyton tells me to stop about my favorite books. So, and again, I'm a trusted person, I hope, but you still want to review the things that I am sharing with you because I do not know your students. I put little M's next to some of them that have a little bit more mature content, but please review them carefully. And again, you know your students. I tend to, for the most part, err on the side of caution. I tended to work with students who had difficult experiences in their personal lives. But there are still some that could be difficult for your folks. Blind Boy and the Loon, super interesting. It's a traditional story, but what's really interesting about this story is that it was made into a short film first. And so it was adapted based on the limitations of the film. And so there is information at the beginning about how they had to change the traditional story to adapt it for this book and for the sort of limitations of the short film. And the link for the film is also there in the resource sheet. But it's quite an interesting story. It's done by Inhabit Media. Inhabit Media is a wonderful publisher, and for the most part I've been super happy with their books, so it's become one of those resources that I tend to sort of have a little less scrutiny over when I'm using them. This is a book that was given to me, and I don't know if you'd be able to track it down, but it was given to me by the Yellowknife School District, and I really love it as a book because it has Indigenous languages at the bottom here, and you'll see that it's color coded. So the different words in English and the local language are there, and you can kind of correspond them. At the back, there is credit that is given to the writer, the illustrator, the translator, and the storyteller, which I absolutely love in terms of collaboration. And that's sort of the thing that you want to be looking for, is this kind of information at the back, or somehow accessible information, because generally if people have done the work, they're pretty proud and want to share it. This is called How Raven Returned the Sun. Let me just see. Now, these are two other ones that were done by Inhabit Media. They are sort of more from the north. The northern stories, just be aware, they can tend to get a little bit scarier. And I believe that these two are variations on the same story, but please don't quote me on that. The texts for what I call, use in middle school tend to have a little bit more text, as opposed to the stuff that I would recommend for younger readers. And these also are a little bit scary. And you'll see that they have different languages represented here. Beautiful books, and again, done by Inhabit Media. Let me just double check. These, I'm sure that you've seen them, but they are traditional stories, collaboration between Roy Henry Vickers and Robert Budd. They're beautiful, and I don't believe I put the link, but there are oral tellings that are of Roy Henry Vickers that can be found online. And so if you do a little search for that, you can actually use the oral stories, which I think is a really wonderful way to bring storytellers into the classroom without actually needing to bring them, especially during this time of COVID.
Sarah,
yes.
Elizabeth was mentioning Blackwater by David Alexander Robertson from Winnipeg. Do you
know I wouldn't do that with a younger reader. I would maybe do it with, let's see, this is me. I would maybe do grade 11, 12. I'm doing it with my university students. And it's not, I mean, there's some difficult content in it for sure. It has more to do with an interest level of, there's some really, I think it's a powerful story for educators. For those of you who don't know, it's a memoir by David A. Robertson talking about learning from his father, and it's a beautiful intergenerational story. If you're looking for something for this age, Governor General award-winning On the Trapline has that similar intergenerational learning. And this is again about David A. Robertson and his father and his family going to visit the trapline, illustrated by Julie Flett.
You're going to shout out the Barren Grounds?
Oh, Leyton, we haven't even like, this is kind of like the limber up phase. We are not even,
I'll let you, like, please continue.
We've barely touched the first little section here. You'll notice that. You'll notice also that I put in some videos and things for, to bring traditional stories into the classroom. Those ones are ones that I have looked at, and I feel fairly confident that they were respectfully gathered and they're being respectfully shared. The digital Scowlet site that is on your list is an excellent resource, and they also show how that information can be shared in the classroom. And the story that Wen Point does about the cannibal woman is amazing, but they request that if you share that, you share it exactly as it is been done in the on the website. With regard to poetry, if any of you have poetry for middle years, I went into Iron Dog Books, which I absolutely love. And if you live anywhere near East Vancouver or visit anywhere near East Vancouver, I highly recommend. And I said, please, are there any middle years Indigenous poetry? And there isn't that much. So I feel that I might need to put out a call for that. There is Magical Beings, which I wrote with my stepmother based on a book for adults. And so at the beginning of this, at the beginning of each section, there is a little poem that kind of takes the highlights of the supernatural being. So I also suggest this as an activity that you can work with informational texts and bring them into poetry. And I think this book offers that example. So what this was is my stepmother wrote a book about the female supernatural beings of Haida Gwaii, and then she really wanted to adapt it for children, and so that's what this book is. And so you'll see that there is the information about the supernatural being, but at the beginning there's a photograph. And if you're thinking about using engaging with visual literacy, these illustrations, I think there's a lot to talk about with the illustrations. The other middle grade read that I found is Res Dogs. It's a book written in verse. It's by David Bruchac. I listened to it as an audiobook and read part of it. It doesn't feel like it needs to be in verse. So that was just my sort of gentle critique of it, but it is very new and it does take place during COVID. So if you're looking for a story and the girl goes and visits her grandparents who live on reserve. And so it's a kind of a fun story and it is written in verse, but that's the extent of my poetry. So if you have other suggestions, I would love to hear about them. In terms of short story, as a read aloud, Res Dogs. Yeah, I think so. It's short, like it's not super long. I think, I mean, because I did listen to it, I thought it worked well, but it doesn't feel like poetry. If I think about other books in verse that I've heard, I actually started just by listening to it, and I couldn't tell. It wasn't until after that I thought maybe I didn't realize that it was in verse. So yeah, you could do it. I would read it first and see if you think it would be interesting. Grade 4 or 5, yeah, I think it would be fine, but read it first to see if you think it would be of interest to them. I just want to make sure there's, Leyton, are you watching the questions?
Yeah,
okay.
Keep rolling.
Okay, Ancestor Approved. This was a fun book. This one just came out, and this is done by Heart Drum, which is a new imprint of HarperCollins, and they are doing middle years Indigenous authors, which is absolutely fantastic because the content is for a little bit of a younger group, and also the level of trauma that sometimes happens in sort of what older YA, difficult content that happens in Indigenous literatures is not happening as much. I mean, there's some difficult parts, but it's not anywhere to the scale. And so definitely I think if I have wonderful nieces, definitely comfortable sharing these. And this one is really neat. This is a compilation of a lot of really fantastic authors, short stories, and it's centered around a powwow. So you'll get some intersections between the different stories. So, the different characters in the story might see someone else and I personally love those kind of shifting perspectives. So this is called Ancestor Approved. It's, and a lot, David A. Robertson is in this. David A. Robertson is almost in everything right now. He's amazing. But definitely a fun read, and one of the only sort of younger middle school reads that I found for short stories. I always kind of put a plug out for doing short stories picture books, especially if you've got students who aren't attending regularly, having the ability to kind of condense lessons into a one-day fully immersive experience. So I put on the list the Less is More resource, which is an older resource, but I really love it for kind of just thinking about ways that we can adapt to use shorter text with students. For slightly older, Moccasin Thunder, this one I believe has been re-released. It's a great collection of short stories, but definitely for slightly older readers. Moccasin Thunder.
Sarah, Jesse's asking about, are you familiar with some Two-Spirit or Indigenous queer resources for middle years?
Okay. This has been difficult. So that one, the 47,000 beads, I feel is a little bit young. I thought it was quite well done. I've reviewed other ones that I'm not going to share just because I didn't personally think that they were strong. And depending on how old you're working with, I just finished looking at Love at the End. And I think there are a couple stories in there that you might be able to use with older readers, but I have not found yet. I will continue my search, but I have not found awesome things, resources or reads for LGBTQ community books. But I did really love 47,000 Beads. If you see that I post a book, it tends to mean that I liked something about it and I didn't have anything that I hated about it. I don't like to post books that I don't like and say things about them. So I'm sorry, I will continue to look. And there were some tweeted out by UBC Soji. I did review all three. The one that I really liked was 47,000 Beats.
Bring it home, Sarah.
How many minutes?
2 minutes.
Oh, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, my books that I wrote with my dad. I wrote them actually for older readers. They've been marketed for younger readers, but I really, really was hopeful. They're kind of 1,000-word narrative essays. And so I really had hoped that this would encourage folks to do storytelling with their families. And this could be a model and then perhaps could be shared with younger students. If I Go Missing is amazing, but definitely for older readers. It is a letter. It's connected to missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's about a girl. It's based on a letter that a girl wrote to the police chief when she was, she noticed the difference between the treatment of Indigenous and non-Indigenous folks when they went missing. These two companion books, I Lost My Talk and I'm Finding My Talk, really fantastic picture books. These are poetry. I should have put them in poetry instead of picture books. I just forgot that. So really, again, a lot of these picture books I think could be mentor texts for literacy activities and storytelling that you're doing in your classroom. I will see you again, and We Dream Medicine Dreams are stunning illustrations. And definitely for older readers, although again, they're being marketed for younger readers. These are definitely for older readers.
Or when you say older readers, you mean middle years readers?
I do. Sorry, I just sort of think that picture books are generally marketed at kind of that 6 to 8 group or even younger. And so I tend to, oh gosh, let me just, Okay, Leyton, I'll say very quickly. Borders, short story by Thomas King, done as a graphic novel, super fun, about identity. Alatsaway, amazing science fiction. So the main character in this book identifies as asexual, but it's sort of not kind of central to the story. And so I didn't mention it as Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer Resources. Amazing fantasy story by Darcy Littlebadger. Healer of the Water Monster, again, from the Heart Drum resource. Really, really interesting read. Navajo traditional story embedded with another story. And I'm going to end with Sisters of the Neversea, which is a rewrite of Peter Pan, looking at the gender stereotypes and the Indigenous stereotypes and really challenging them into a really interesting and engaging rewrite of Peter Pan. And I have so many more, so you can just look at the list.
Folks, can we offer some just love and appreciation to Sarah in the chat box? What a gift you've been to us today, Sarah. I so appreciate the care that you've taken in planning today's session, thinking about what was doable, the chunks of time that we have, but also helping us to think about not adding and stirring Indigenous content, but really looking at the intent of the work from the nation or the author's perspective, and then thinking about how we can draw that in a way in our classrooms where we're not making it fit our needs, we're thinking about what this text can teach us. And so sometimes teaching in the middle years, if not often teaching in the middle years, is less about what we plan to do, and it's more about what can happen when we engage with voices that are either not our own or that offer us insights into ourselves when we don't get a chance to see our perspectives, our backgrounds, or our heritages in our spaces. Middle years work is identity work, not so that we're all the same, but so that we understand that our difference is our superpower, and you've modeled that today. And I have to say, every day in our friendship.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for letting me talk about books for so long. I love it.
1 week from now, the recording will come out from email. You can just click on it, you can share it, and it'll be segmented into the sections of today. So you can just rewatch the section that you want to share or work with or think about in your own practice. And we will see you for our third session on a mysterious date, which is no longer mysterious. It's January 13th. Where my friends and colleagues Medjabeen Datu, Miriam Miller, and Shaheen Musani will come and share their work. That session will be cross-curricular, everyone, and so we'll be taking up social and emotional learning from an equity perspective. Medjabeen will be thinking with us around humanities, and Shaheen will help us think about mathematics, all with the middle years, all with an equity and diversity lens. Thank you for being your amazing selves. I'm so glad that some of us have power again. If you don't have power right now, it'll come. Also, for those of you who are stranded on other sides of the mountains, our heart goes out to you, and we know that your emotional resources were already stretched this year. But the things that you do for kids are just incredible, and we trust that you will do your best to take care of yourselves so that you can take care of your learners. All right, love you in a professional way. We are engaging in this work together in a pedagogy of love. Doesn't mean we get it, but we're going to love our way into being together.